G'day subscribers, today we're going to talk about judging mechanical. You're with Jules Knight on Jive Talking Garage. Okay, so what we're doing is a series on the AHF rulebook that just tells members how the judges go about judging each of the components that are required for an AHF Nationals or state titles or AHF sanctioned event. So the last component I've got to talk about is the mechanical. So we've talked about all the others, including scrutineering. So what I wanted to touch on was just to give you an idea about all of the components, about what's involved and so on. And I'll just show you what the worth of each of the components and their scores are. And it's coming up now. Okay, so the first component that the judging sheet wants you to look at is the firewall, the subframe, and the underside of the bonnet. So that's 5 points. So I don't know if you break it up into 5 points for each of the three items or not. It can be however you want to do it, but firewall, subframe, and bonnet underside, 15 points. Now, the next part is worth a quarter of all the marks, and that's to do with the engine. Now, the engine's 25 points. Now, one of the really good things from the Shepparton Nationals that came out was a newsletter, and one of the fellows who takes a big interest in stock put together some tips and clips as far as what are all of the required clips for an engine and what should be where and all those sorts of things, and it was really good. I know I've put it up at NASCO Bay Jive Talking Garage on Facebook so that members there could see them, but it showed on an engine what clips there should be. Excuse me. And also, I've previously talked to members about engine grey, and I know that there is a discussion when you go to a Nationals, you rock up there with pipes from the fuel pump to the carburetor and the vacuum pipes to the carburetor and so on, and they're painted. Someone's got them painted, someone's got them cadmium bright zinced or whatever. I really don't get into that. Who's that small-minded that wants to argue and put someone else's car down based on something different? Because let's face it, each of the factories did different things, and that includes even painting the cargo area with the boards being Mundy brown. They weren't exactly the same colour for every single car. I've even been told that by a General Motors painter. So with the engine, just think about it for a moment. The engines get tested and started to make sure they're going to be put into a car and they're going to work. They don't just blindly stick them in a car and hope for the best. They actually QA them, or quality control, quality assurance. It would have been QC, quality control back then. So there's certainly pictures of people starting on the assembly line, finishing the engines, hooking them up to a petrol source, a fuel source, and then starting them up. Now, they're all unpainted at this point. So, what's going to happen from then? They're not going to take all of the everything off it. They take, obviously, the distributor out to respray the motor at that point, but they're not going to take all the lines off and all the carburetor. They'll put a paint tin or whatever over the top of the carburetor and then shoot it with engine grey, and then add all of the black components to it, like the breather pipe, for instance. But as far as the, what's bright zinc and what's cadmium plated, and I think people just need to get a bit of a grip of reality and just say, look, let's celebrate the fact that someone's driving a really nice early model Holden and it's correctly fitted out as far as, what the hardware is there. And understand things are different at every factory. And I'm not just talking Holden, I'm talking Ford and Mopar and all sorts of makes and models. They just do whatever needs to be done to get those cars finished and out the door. So, when you're looking at a motor, you got 25 points there. They'll be looking at everything from the distributor to the finish of the paint for the clips, to see what type of carburetor's on it. Like, for instance, on my 1956 carburetor, it is getting ready for the FE carburetors and the FE engines, and my fuel line comes in and then it's around. Well, I've got a friend who's got a 56, and I remember the judges when we first brought that car out, they go, oh no, it shouldn't have that, and it should actually have the fuel pipe at 90 degrees, going into the connection point of the carburetor, and so they've changed it, and it didn't need to. It's a matter of having judges who know what they're talking about, or people providing advice for knowing what they're talking about. And that particular car, it came with an FE air cleaner because it was manufactured after the introduction of the FE Holden, as FJ panel vans were, and so were Utes for that matter. But anyway, look, 25 points, and we'll also include the finish of the paint, looking at how good it has been done. Some of them just beautiful. I've got one friend and he paints a motor, and gee whiz, it's just immaculate. It looks amazing. And that will also include, the right spark plugs and the right plug leads and all those, has it been refinished to showroom condition as the ultimate? Well, if it's the ultimate, well, then it's a 25 score, and then it just comes down from there. Now, wiring's out of 5. Obviously, you can have a cotton loom, or as they got closer to the introduction of 12 volts in the FE Holden, they started manufacturing them in PVC wiring. So you could have either. Excuse me. So wiring out of 5 points. That includes the condition. Now, cloth wiring can be really, really ratty and terrible. I know mine certainly was. When I bought my FJ, it had a cloth loom in it. It was rotting. It was ratty. It very poorly illuminated the road, and it wasn't until we ripped everything out and put a new plastic wiring harness through it, put new bulbs, new battery, nice big heavy duty starting lead and proper earths and so on, and then we started to get some really good efficiency out of that electrical wiring system. So wiring 5 points, gearbox 10, and so that will also include how clean is it? Is it leaking? Is it painted the right colour? The hardware on it. Excuse me, I've got the coughs this morning. Is the hardware finished correctly? All of those sorts of things. So that's 10 points for the gearbox. Now, the diff assembly and the springs, that's a pretty big item, actually, and there's a lot of work in that. That's 10 points. Looking for, how good's all the black paint? Is the diff leaking? What's the pinion seal like? What's the condition of everything? So all of those sorts of things come into it. Now, the next component that has the value of the same score as the previous item is chassis and floor pan. Chassis and floor pan, that's 10 points. So that's a really, really big area. So when you look at floors, they probably come in 4 guises. Red oxide, black, body deadener that could be, that was a day 2 accessory, and that covers a multitude of sin, or an original floor that's just got dirt and mud splattered all over it. That's the 4th item. So, you're judging the score out of 10. So that's what's happening for chassis and floor pan. The next part is the drive shaft. That's worth 5 points. So drive shaft's black. You're looking at what the condition of it is from where it hooks up at the differential with the 4 bolts to the yoke where it slides into the back of the gearbox, and what's the general condition of things. That's a real, not for nothing, that's a real easy 5 points there to make sure that's clean, it's been sanded and paint stripped and whatever, and then repainted a lovely black colour, and then put back into service. I had mine taken out, then over to Driveline Services to get it all balanced, and then I hung it high and painted it gloss black, and looked beautiful in the end. But anyway, drive shaft, 5 points. Front suspension and steering. Now there is a lot in this for 8 points. Front suspension and steering. There are a lot of components and moving parts in 8 points. So, and also a lot of cleaning, for that matter too, to make it nice and have good appearance for the judging. Exhaust system, 7. So when you're thinking about, and let's talk stocky for a minute, okay? So the exhaust system is from the manifold to the clamp at the gearbox, through to the hangers at the back, to the cylindrical muffler that's on it, and then the appropriate tailpipe. Now, early ones had the S-bend in them, and others just had an angle coming off the muffler. And you would also get the exhaust. There were 3 types of exhaust deflector, and what's called a droop. So there was 3 types of those available from NASCO. Now they were in a steel, but I've seen some poor people marked down for having stainless steel. They've had it manufactured in stainless steel so that it's good for life. And you get some small-minded judge who wants to just, well, that's not right, we're going to make sure he doesn't win anything. And that's terrible. It doesn't need to be like that. That's not how the system works. Well, that's not good for the car fraternity. And that's no one's opinion. That's my opinion. And I stand by that. So when you're judging things, you need to have an open mind about, okay, what have I got in front of me? How good is it? What is it supposed to be? And how good is it? How good is it technically? How good is it aesthetically? What's the quality like? All of those sorts of things. That's how it's supposed to work. And the other piece for 5 points, the last piece in all of this that adds up to the round number of 100, is the hoses, pipes, and cables. Hoses, pipes, and cables. So you're talking about your radiator pipes, top and bottom. You're talking about, as in radiator hoses, I should really say. You're talking about pipes in and out of the motor. You're talking about, the battery cables. You're talking about the speedo cable. You're talking about the handbrake cable. All of those things as to how well things are technically and how they've been finished. Now, when people are doing the mechanical judging, have a bit of sympathy for the poor judges, because think about it for a moment. If there's 100 cars, we've talked about here, the firewall, subframe, and underside of bonnet, through to front suspension and steering. So they're looking under the front of the car. Excuse me. They're looking at the exhaust system. So they're looking under one side of the car at least. They're looking at chassis and floor pan. So no doubt they will be looking at the other side of the car, and they're also looking at the diff, springs, and exhaust system. So that's the back of the car. So when you think about it, if you've got 100 cars and you've at least got to get up and down 4 times for each car, that's 400 times you've got to get up and down. That's an awful lot. And it's a real credit to people who take this job on and do it, because, you know, I've known the next day you're really, really sore, and all that lactic acid just comes out of your joints, and you think, oh, gee whiz, I'm not feeling all that great. And it's because there's so much work that's actually involved in this. And not only that, you know, you're spending a lot of time on your back, underneath the car, looking at stuff. You know, I've seen mechanical engineer Mark Faulkner take this extremely seriously and spend a lot of time under each of the cars doing it right. You know, you get people like, for instance, Russell Tronk talking about suspension and so on. You know, these people really, really know their stuff. They are experts in what they're looking for and what they're doing and what they're seeing and the appropriate scoring, and they're being really fair about it. And you cannot wish for better type people to be doing this type of work, because it is a thankless job. It is hard. It's as hard to do it as it is hard to, prepare it in some instances. But, what I'd like to just sort of, leave people with is this is the last piece in our puzzle of how all of the components from the AHF rulebook come together. We've talked about the scrutineering and all the other 4 scoring parts, including the safety check and passes and fails and stuff like that. So I really hope that members and subscribers have gotten something out of it. All we've been trying to do is just demystify what is the actual makeup of the scoring, so that people just don't go along to the presentation and they read out the results and it's like, well, what does it mean? Or did I get anything or did not get anything? Or why didn't I? Or whatever. So I wanted to just explain to people what is involved in making up the scores. And this is all freely available, and I've certainly got it at the NASCO Bay Jive Talking Garage website, on Facebook, I should really say, on the page, so that members can go along and, without having to download the entire rule book, they can just see the scoring system, just to make it nice and easy for them. And, that's just par for the course of the types of things that we're doing at Jive Talking Garage. We've got plenty of other videos there for people to look and see. We also want folks to stop by the quirky home of Holden at NASCO Bay on Facebook, Jive Talking Garage, and see all the little things that we're doing. We've got a show coming up in October at Victoria Point. We're up on the rooftop there. So we're moving from where we were last time, down below, to up top this time on the car rooftop in the car park there. So that sort of wraps up the series that we've got for all of the different judging components. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been doing. But the last thing I want to leave you with is enjoy your Holden.